To us, Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to Stream Sheet Day 106, and I'm joined by my very special guest, Logan. Are you okay with that, or do you want the whole thing? Because I normally say the whole thing.
No, that's fine. Logan's fine.
Well, here he is. This man here, he is a legend in many different fields, but I'm really happy that I get to speak to you today. How are you? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm surprisingly okay. I haven't gone stir crazy yet. Cabin fever hasn't yet set in. But yeah, indoors, staying alert and staying safe.
Good. Well, hello to everyone who's joined us live. Thanks very much for doing so. Logan, do you wanna let us know who you are? I mean, I could try and ham fist it, but talk to me about your background, what you do, who you are, because
Uh,
I think everyone needs to know that.
yeah, I'm someone who's been very fortunate to be passionate enough about my hobbies and hardworking enough to be able to turn a few of them into a career. Um, I used to do a podcast with a lot of the boys from Team Wales about 40K. We haven't done one of those for about a year and a half now. It's called Allies of Convenience. Some people may have heard of that. Some people may have heard about me doing my other hobbies, which I'm most known for DJing UK grime music, which I don't know if that is particularly popular with your audience, but
It's
it's
popular
something
with me, if that helps.
well, that's all good. Thankfully, it's popular with enough people for me able to earn a living out of it. So I've been doing that since about 2002. Was fortunate enough to broadcast on radio on Kiss FM in London, BBC Radio 1 and 1 Extra for a few years as well. And then also, at the same time, for the last 10 years, I have been broadcasting and commentating in esports, specifically focusing on Street Fighter, the Street Fighter franchise, which is still going strong. And they have organized world leagues and pro tours for that. So I get the opportunity to fly around the world and commentate people playing video games, which is really fun. So yeah, very fortunate to be able to do that for a living. And yeah, every day I get up and I just indulge in all my nerd hobbies every day. And some of it I get paid for, some of it I don't. But yeah, every day's a pleasure.
Yes, I think actually there's loads of parity and similarity between us. Maybe both of us do commentating. You more professional than I, definitely. But that's the thing. Both of us have DJ'd. You more professional than I. You're basically better me, is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
I mean, I can't grow the beard, but other
I'm not
than
sure.
that,
I'm not sure if this makes me weaker though. Maybe that's. I should have got this off, and that would have solved many problems for me
I
through
mean,
my life.
I have to say, you held out at being a real adult for longer than I did, though, because I dropped out of university in my second year
Yeah.
because it was fucking dull. I don't know if I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to swear or
You
not.
are. You are. You are. You're all good.
Brilliant. It was fucking dull. I was doing maths and physics joint honours at King's College in London. Um, I was only doing it because I thought maths was the most employable degree. My old man worked in finance in the city, and I thought, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go and do that. And I used to spunk off of lectures and go to all the record stores in London, and just sit in there and listen to records all day, and nip at the Games Workshop up in Covent Garden and just bum about really. And I just couldn't focus on being a productive member of society, but I was super passionate about my hobbies. So I kind of gave up straight away, made my mum cry, dropped out of university and focused on being a DJ in 2001. Until 2010 when streaming came about for video games, and then I somehow managed to blag that. So it's not like I was lazy because I worked very hard at the things I wanted to do, but I found it very, very difficult to apply myself to stuff that I just wasn't passionate about, which I suppose is a luxury that some of us have now in this age where, things like Twitch exist and Patreon and all that kind of stuff where you can monetize the things you're passionate about that might not be traditional industries. So.
I think also the concept of what traditional industry is has been attacked quite fundamentally, and I think that's really important as well. Like, what does someone want to do with their day now? Isn't it has to be X or Y? Now it's whatever I want it to be.
Yeah.
Like it's like each person individually gets to choose what they want to be a part of, and I actually think that's a much better future for all of us, truthfully. And so I'm really glad that that's come about at that time. And we talked about a little bit off air just a moment ago that obviously we were of that generation where those were some of the first opportunities to do so. I mean, obviously people were in bands and have been DJs and have lived their own best lives, joined the circus. I feel like take us back 100 years, you and me are running away to a circus. That's happening.
Yeah, basically. I think it's a very valid point that nowadays that kind of lifestyle choice is a lot more valid because we have a world marketplace. 20, 30 years ago, maybe we'd be putting together a fanzine, that we'd be printing up ourselves and just, handing out at our local gaming store or what have you, or going around the arcade and doing that. But now, you get people all around the world tuning in and enjoying your content. And if they enjoy it enough, they'll subscribe or donate or sign up as a Patreon, and it can keep you ticking over. And if you're dedicated and consistent and passionate enough about it, eventually you'll build up that audience. It's about whether you can kind of remain consistent for long enough for it to turn into something that can keep the lights turned on, I guess, and food in your belly. And you did take a big leap out there, didn't you, a couple of years ago, which I think is massively admirable. And I've just, I know we don't talk often, but I follow you and on the social media, and I'm very aware of all the content you do. And I think it's a really great example to set, because if you do anything for long enough and you believe in it and it's of a decent enough quality, because it doesn't, we're not exactly, doing Pulitzer Prize winning journalistic content out here when we're vlogging every day, but you'll build up an audience and eventually it will be enough to turn it into a career, which is beautiful. You don't have to turn up to work and have someone tell you what you're going to do and moan at you for it's not like this or that and all the other wonderful corporate things that you previously had to deal with. Now you are the master of your own destiny.
No, I do, and I do appreciate that. And honestly, like we talked off air before, 14, 16-hour days are pretty regular for me, but it doesn't really stress me out at all. I like what I do, and that's fine. I also would like to say that when we do get on to talking about Warhammer, and we do talk about vlogging.
Oh, yeah.
No, hold on. No, but when we do we don't have to at all, don't worry. But when we do talk about vlogging, I would like to say that there might be some drama in the Warhammer world, or the Grime world, or generally the Twitter world, or wherever there might be, but there will never be as much drama as there is in the beauty makeup video world. That is a little, I don't know if anyone, it's my little personal slice of escapism, is beauty vloggers who do makeup tutorials. They have drama which involve millions of people. It's the most exciting shit you've never cared about. Yeah. Are you aware of any of this?
It's not something that I could profess to ever be on top of. No.
Don't worry about it. It's not important at all. But like, just occasionally, every 6 months, something's happens in the beauty world on YouTube, and I just get sucked into like the video, the react video, and I leave it all thinking, I hate every one of you, and this is the worst. But then I cycle back to regular life, which is model soldiers. So talking about, go on after you.
I see someone in the stream chat said Team James Charles. I think I know who that is.
Yes. No, it's all about Tatty, and you know it. How dare you? Loads of podcasters like, this is wrong. I'm not enjoying this. So, talking about the miniatures world, and you said you love 40k. How did you get into playing Warhammer when you started out?
I was a boy born in the 80s in the UK, and I think literally every single boy has walked into a Games Workshop store at least once in their life. I didn't do that, though. I remember some kid bringing a it must have been a White Dwarf, because they brought in a magazine into primary school. I remember seeing miniatures in it, and I thought, these are really cool. And then I didn't think about it again for like a couple of years, because it's not like Games Workshop in the 80s had stores everywhere like they did now. So I didn't know where to get any of this stuff from. It was just pictures of things that I knew that they weren't toys, but they looked like toys, and that it's just like to an 8 or 9 year old, they were just fascinating to me. And I remember when I was in secondary school, I came across a white dwarf again in a newsagent's and thought, yeah, I love all this stuff. This looks really cool. Had Space Marines in it, and I went to Lakeside Shopping Centre and bought a couple of, I think, Chaos Terminators in a blister pack that were, I don't know, they were probably like £3 for two back then or something, whatever the prices were. And I have literally since like 1994 bought White Dwarf every week. I mean, as you can see behind me, I have wasted a huge amount of money on publications here.
Yeah.
So I just really enjoy it. I don't know why I enjoy it so much. Go in and out of being involved in actually playing and painting, what have you. But it's like one of those things that it's burrowed into my heart and my mind. So I'm always following it and interested in it. I love the universe of 40K. I love the idea of competitive anything as well, but more so than anything, I love the imagery and universe.
Well, there's loads of questions I'd like to ask you about that. I think we'll come back to the competitive element later because I think that's a really key point I'd love to discuss with you. What and talking about the universe, are you excited for like the expanded nature that the universe is going to encompass? Like, obviously, there's a Marvel comic series.
Mate,
Yeah, go on,
Marvel comic series. When I saw that announced, it's like, because I'm a huge comic fan. I still go to Forbidden Planet. Well, I used to go to Forbidden Planet every week. Massive X-Men fan, and so for me, that was just like my loves converging and powering up like a Gestalt entity. I did see the artwork of the Calgar, and it looked a little bit childish to me.
Agreed.
So I was a little bit let down. It looked kind of like the cover art from those Warhammer adventure novels that they've put out, rather than like a gritty. Like they're putting out so much cool, gritty, grimdark stuff, especially with the series that they're putting together. I thought,
Yes.
yeah, perfect opportunity to do something like that. So I know it's only a mini series and they can go in different directions, but in principle, I'm super excited. I'm really happy to see Games Workshop using their IP in ways that we've probably all been begging them to do for decades as fans. Seeing the Bandai Namco and the McFarlane Toys collaborations is super cool. They've got the actual merch website now as well, where don't have to buy illegal bootleg merchandise T-shirts off the internet anymore.
I don't know. I quite like that element though. That's a bit rock and roll for me. I'm into that sometimes.
Bootleg merch, definitely. I hear that. But it's nice that they're just doing it and offering I like to be able to at least have the choice of giving them their money before I buy something somewhere else that looks better. But it's something that I'm surprised that they haven't done before, because before that it was literally just, all right, we'll license a video game, but everything else we just sell miniatures and that's it. And now they're kind of realizing there's all these 30-year-old guys with expendable income. They can spend money on other stuff as well. Like all the money, give us all the money.
Well, I also think it's come at the right time as well, because if they'd branched into it or like decided to attack it 10, 15 years ago, I actually think the quality there isn't as much readily available examples of what they should copy and follow 10 or 15 years ago. Now they just have to be as savvy as the most basic like corporation. Like they don't have to do particularly well to be on that edge. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like if you look at like the MCU, which is like quite old now, really, like the actual like cinematic universe, they're 10, 15 years behind that. They're obviously way beyond like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So actually, entering into these spheres and merchandise and stuff, I'm kind of happy that they've approached it now, because it means that there's less opportunity for them to put out some really poor, like low tier stuff and do justice to a world that we're all super passionate about, right? In a really positive way. So do you play much competitively, or have you played much competitively? Obviously you did the Allies of Convenience podcast, and like have you got much?
Not for a while, but I've been following the competitive scene. I absorb podcasts. Information's wonderful. I like following the meta and watching all the streams that everyone's been putting together recently. I love watching Glasshammer, Art of War. Those guys have been doing some really great stuff that I enjoy watching on Twitch, and I'm sure we'll talk about Twitch more as this conversation goes on. But yeah, I'm hoping to get involved now that nine. Every time I sit down, I'm like, right, I'm gonna get involved now. I've got this idea for a list that I really want to do, and it's quite because I'm very specific about how I want to play 40k as well. I don't want to just be like, right, this is good, I'll play that. You know, I like Space Marines and I like hitting things in combat. So if I can do those two things, then I'm interested in playing 40k. If it's a million bolter shots with a chapter that doesn't play in that way, I'm kind of like, no, I'm not really interested. But yeah, at the moment, it's kind of in a good place and interests me. And I sat down, I was like, right, cool, I'm going to have a go at this. I'm going to build some models and get painting and start going to tournaments. And then they announced the new edition, and I was like, fuck. have I wasted all my time now? Is the meta going to flip on its head? Is everything going to be shit now that I've just bought and assembled? So I'm going to wait. And then once the rules are fully released, rather than this drip feeding that we get at the moment, then hopefully I'll be able to get involved again. But I love the tournament scene. It's really good fun.
Well, yeah, I'd like to talk to you in a bit about the tournament scene and where you and how that compares to other things that I know that you're involved with really heavily. But before we do that, obviously today, big news today, we've seen some leaks for the Space Marines points and what is blast weapons. But unfortunately, this seems to have come from a watermark document which is attached to the Mournival, which is the playtesting group. Like I know you had some thoughts on playtesters and that kind of environment as well. Like especially compared to other game systems you're a part of, or like how do you rate kind of the way it works at the minute, 40k specifically if you want, but anything, like how do you see the ecosystem of professional gaming when it comes to Warhammer at the minute?
It is, well, professional gaming is absolutely not a term that you could apply to anything related to Warhammer. For a start, it's organized gaming. There's organized gaming. There's organized competitive gaming. Stuff like the ITC and ETC formats that have coalesced gamers into accepting a format of playing and rule sets and a league ladder system and what have you. So you kind of have the starting points of tabletop esports, T-sports. I don't know what to call it, but there's no money in it, obviously, which I think is a good thing for a game that's as abstract as tabletop gaming. If there was a lot of money involved in it, then we'd go back to 4th edition where you're having fist fights with the tins in Warhammer World and stuff.
I think it's a little bit more. I think it's a little bit more evolved than that, maybe now.
You think so? But if someone starts, giving it I accidentally nudged that guy into charge range, and you're playing for $5,000 on table 1 in game 6, then there might be some fisticuffs in the car park. But yeah, going back to sort of the playtesting element. Obviously, everyone's on an NDA, right? But and breaking your NDA is serious. And there's been, having spoken to some people in the community, I know that a lot of the playtesters in Britain don't have the same access as the playtesters in America because of NDAs being broken over the years. And these leaks, I believe, have come from the American playtesters, as I've been made aware. So it's difficult to. And also, I believe the playtesters aren't paid at all for their work. It's more like a passionate thing. We want to be involved and make the game better, and it's a privilege to have access and blah, blah, blah. But really, you're doing work for a corporation that is posting record profits every year. So I think if you want to kind of have people take this process really seriously in terms of leaks and not sharing this information, then you need to be putting people on retainers for that work. I think once you start giving people some kind of financial incentive to be professional, then they will act more professional.
Yeah, I follow that sentiment. Absolutely, I think one of the things that we could see more in the ecosystem environment that we're in is that professionalism, and it's not to denigrate or disregard the work put in for free by these people who are passionate, but a corporation who has lots of money should pay lots of money to do a better job. I think that's definitely fair, and it kicks them in the ass. Like today is a good example. Every leak is a really healthy example of why they should pay people professionally. Because if you've got your mate, you're going to be like, do you know what, mate? I trust you.
Yeah.
Here's the pictures of the Space Marines. You're not going to share it with anyone. And then he
And
goes,
he's going to
well,
trust his mate. Yeah, and that's what happens.
that's
And I
what
have to
happens.
say, coming from the gaming world, I've seen this happen in the gaming world as well. Because obviously, um, with fighting games specifically, again, it's a competitive endeavor. It's a singles thing that people train really hard for and put in loads of hours so that they can lab situations and be ready for it. It's very, very similar to wargaming. Obviously, it just happens a lot faster than a tabletop game. But you have the same thing of, games are in development. They need the pro players to test the games out to make sure that they are, they can hold up at the highest level of players that know how to break the game. And those guys end up doing the same thing. Yeah, this is in the game. This is what's going on. These are the characters that are coming out in Street Fighter or Tekken or Marvel versus Capcom, whatever. And they'll tell their friends because they trust their friends. And then they'll tell their friends because they trust. And exactly the same thing happens. And again, these people are not being paid for doing the work either, significantly paid. So it is an issue of that. And unfortunately, what happens is if you're only working with people that you can implicitly trust on goodwill, then you end up narrowing down the list of people that you can work with, and it will affect the quality of the work that you get done. So,
Yeah.
but obviously, it's on them. If you're leaking shit, then it's never justified. But there's ways and means to make it kind of more incentivized to be as professional as possible.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something that I'd like to see as well, especially as we get into a burgeoning competitive scene as well. Like you've mentioned some people like Glasshammer, for instance, they're working super hard on making sure that what they do, they've been out to a couple of ETCs to help try and do some coverage of those as well. Like they've been putting the work in. I think like also when it comes to 40k as well, weirdly, England doesn't really get recognised anywhere near as much as you might necessarily see the Americans or North Americans as well. And I know also that's also true how the Europeans feel as well, having been having some big long conversations with the guys at the WTC recently. So it'd be nice to see it. Which is weird for the flip for Age of Sigmar, because Age of Sigmar, it's just England. That's the focus, yeah. And
Okay.
then the Aussies are like, actually, we've got the biggest tournament, and Games Workshop don't even mention the tournament. They don't mention their 240-person event that happens every single year. Poland's posting massive team events. Sweden's banging out 100 people like it's nothing. And so it's really interesting the flip on that, and I think that it's got a lot to do with internal. Having been there, it's got a lot to do with internal politics. In the main game designers are most interested, or the lead devs are most interested in Age of Sigmar personally, so their emotional content and what happens. So like lots of the guys in the community team are Age of Sigmar players, so then lots of that conversation happens in the UK, and then they just go, FLG guys, you just sort it out. We'll just talk to you. That's easier. Which actually, that's something you and me can both talk about a little bit. And I think would be an interesting question that I've never. So it's a bit of a proto question in my head. So I'm sorry if it's not fully formed. But you're very conscious of influencers, how people market. I sometimes will talk about hype beasts on the show, and I think I lose quite a lot of the audience at that point. But I know that you're aware of that. Do you recognise that happening in the wargaming industry to some degree, or maybe you might be able to describe it better for people than I can?
Absolutely, it's very important because anyone with a following that can directly speak to that following, and that's what an influencer is. The influencer isn't just you know, some guy or girl off of Love Island that's trying to sell you skinny tea and, fake tan on Instagram. And getting paid hundreds of thousands for it. And an influencer is literally just that, someone that can influence an audience. And the people that are consistently putting content together and are growing their own audience, again, companies like to make the most of that because it allows them to kind of do really hyper-focused marketing to an audience that they know cares about their product. So rather than trying to do a scattershot approach of hoping people care about what you're putting out there, you can go to these influencers and speak to them, and they will speak to their audience in turn. It's an interesting thing in wargaming though, because aside from like GW sending people a book a week before it comes out, I guess I'm not really sure what they do with seeding and influencer projects and marketing. GW and marketing isn't really a thing, right? GW the marketing approach is very much like a super high-end automobile manufacturer. You rarely see adverts for Lamborghini, for example. The people that want a Lamborghini know it exists, they go and buy it. You don't see a lot of advertising for Games Workshop. It's a high-end hobby. The people that know it exists go and find it. They go and buy it. They know where to get it from. Games Workshop make the majority of their profit through selling directly, so they don't have to worry about wholesales and retail margins. It's all profit for them generally. That's why a lot of the stuff is direct order through their own website, and they always encourage people to buy through them rather than local gaming stores. But they still recognize the importance of having local gaming stores. And now they're kind of recognizing the importance of influencers because it's a similar thing. It gets people involved and attached to the hobby. And they know that the more people they get involved and attached to the hobby, the more sales they get. At the end of the day, that's what their business model is, to sell as many as possible.
I also think one of the things that we're missing a tad in the past few years, and especially past couple of weeks actually, with the announcement of 9th edition and obviously 40k being much bigger than Age of Sigmar, I've actually seen quite a few other streamers who traditionally do Magic the Gathering content or they do other content. So there's a one particular Magic the Gathering content creator, I can't remember his name right now, who's just gone, my off game is going to be once a month. It's going to be 40k, and he just like smashed out, like, to his audience of mainly Magic the Gathering fans, a pretty professional, I don't know anything about the factions of 40k, but here's a really good YouTube video that you would see from any of those, like, we bang this out for a living every day sort of like tier. And actually, like, because I watched it, I was like, this guy's first foray, I'm gonna give it a watch. It like racked up 20,000-30,000 views, which is pretty decent. I was like, yeah, and that's all going straight into his Magic the Gathering crowd. And my point is I think we might actually see over the next couple of years, we think we've had an explosion now. I think we might see the explosion happen in the next couple of years where we're just like, holy crap, that's a lot of people playing this game. Because there's a whole audience which have always seen it and thought, actually, that seems quite difficult to pick up, or actually the company don't really relate to me. They don't market like Wizards do. They don't market like this other company. And now the influencers are following the audience. Does that make sense? They're like, yes. They go in, okay, this market's pretty saturated. Maybe Magic's not as big as it once was. We're going to jump to this other thing, which is like record sales 5 years in a row. Movies are coming out. Holy shit, I'm jumping on board that bandwagon. I think we might see that. That's just a guess, though. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, one of the other things that I've never been able to fathom is going back to a more general turn of influences. The people that are out there that, you always have the forum posts or the Reddit posts about so and so famous person plays Warhammer. I think one of the obvious ones we had recently was Henry Cavill when he was on lockdown painting a Custodes model.
Yeah,
I'm amazed that GW never do anything with that. Like, I remember seeing Ed Sheeran on tour and he was painting up a box of Space Marines, and there's others going through it.
Yeah, Frank Carter plays. I know that for a fact.
Yeah. So, but they don't do anything with that at all, and it's fascinating to me that again, you want to reach an audience, and it's not like it's a fake partnership where you're just paying someone to look like they're interested. They're genuinely interested um, in the product, in the hobby, not just in the product, like actually being involved in the hobby element of it. And they don't do anything with that, and that always was peculiar to me.
Yeah, it's super weird. Big shout out to Mizzy, by the way, for subbing, and everyone else. And also, I'd just like to tell Dave Fraser to fuck himself. Just really quickly. Um, yeah. Well, anyway, that's a super interesting, and I'm glad I've been able to have that conversation with you because I think you got your finger on the pulse and understand that. So, competitive gaming. I know I've talked about whether or not. It's professional or where it might be. But when it comes to casting, that's the other thing that you and me have got in common, which I think is genuinely fascinating. And because you've done like shoutcasting, some people call it. I call it commentating, but
I just commentate. I hate the term casting. I'm not
same,
a wizard. I do
same.
no spells on stream. I commentate.
Yeah, that's what I do. I call it that as well. I find it super
Yeah.
weird. But the Americans love that. Hey, you a
Yeah.
shoutcaster? It's like, sure. How have you found that experience? Like, because obviously, can I give you my experience and let you know like how I got into it, and then
Go ahead.
see. So mine was simple as I set up Warhammer Live because I was like, I very much was riffing off what I'd seen happen in the computer game industry and what I'd seen happen in Magic the Gathering. And I was like, well, if we showcase games, we set up a tournament structure, you do games, you do that, you show it, you commentate on them, you show how exciting they can be instead of two people doing the mechanics of it, which is quite generally dull. You know, the talking element. And you make it really viable and really interesting. You go through that, and then they were like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then I tried to hire some commentators, but obviously they wouldn't pay for any. So it was like, well, I have to do the job, I guess, and go through the
Yeah.
process. And then there was also some guys who like were great, Eddie, John. Who worked there as well, but I picked them. I was like, Eddie's great for Age of Sigmar. John was amazing for 40k. He would just riff off on 40k for like 2.5 hours, which was great. But that was my experience, and it's got I've taken it a lot more seriously when I left and I started doing it for myself again and reinventing myself and re-understanding what would be most interesting. And obviously, the problem I have a little bit is that I've always done it myself or with people who've jumped on board with me, and some of whom have been amazing at doing so. But it's still, especially for wargaming, it's such a new field. It's super. Like I had the Falcon on when I was at Capital City Bloodbath from the 40k Stat Center, and he was phenomenal. I was just like, cool, I'm done. I quit. I'm out. Like, just all I got to do is make sure the cameras are here and the mic is on, and you
Yeah.
can do the job for me. What was your experience getting into it? How did it happen for you?
Um, so before the streaming thing happened, I just started putting on small local gathering events for Street Fighter 4 in 2010, which was just around the same time Justin TV came out, which, you know, Justin TV and Ustream came out at the same time. And Justin TV kind of filtered off towards gaming and became Twitch. It went on to become Twitch. We all know how big Twitch is now. But yeah, Ed Sheeran definitely does what the should.
That's what I'm going to say now. I'm now going to call it Ed Sheeran's favorite 40k show.
That's exactly. Put that in the one sheet, the PDF that you're sending out to sponsors. Do that. How are they going to find out otherwise? They can't
Exactly.
speak.
Exactly.
How are you going to fact check that? So we started live streaming these events that we did, literally because there was someone that came down and he was just mad keen on the technology. I don't know if that's kind of something that you were into at the time
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
me.
Yeah, it's just like,
Yeah.
there's streaming things happening, and I've got a laptop and I've got a webcam and a capture card. I can do this, and they just started streaming our events. I have a history in radio broadcasting. I'm also not particularly good at playing fighting games because I just don't have the time to put the hours in. It's very much like, you know, same with 40k. You have to put hours and hours in to be able to identify the situations and be able to make the right decisions. It's very much decision making. Obviously, the difficult thing about fighting games is you don't have 3 hours to make those decisions. You have split seconds to make those decisions, and you need to have the execution to do it as well. in terms of doing the moves and stuff. But I'm super nerdy about things that I'm passionate about, and I'm reasonably adequate at getting across my passion for those things. So when I started just being the host of the streams, the commentary went kind of well, and I started getting asked to do other events. I got asked to go to DreamHack in Sweden, which is like the biggest gaming event in the world for competitive gaming.
Yeah, I've been in touch with those guys. When I was at Games Workshop, they got in touch with me actually. But they were like, we can come and set it all up for you. I was like, dude, they've given me like $1.5 grand budget. There's no, like, it's like no way.
Can we talk about your budget for that bloody Warhammer TV stream though? Because it was hilarious.
Which
I remember
one?
when you put the first when I started speaking to you.
Yes, because you did.
This...
And I'd also like to just let everyone know that Logan actually like went out of his way to try really hard to get in touch with me and to help me do some of the stuff early on. So I need to thank you again, both to yourself but also publicly for doing so. So thanks.
No problem. But I just remember you had like some capture card that was worth about $5,000. You had like broadcast quality cameras. Some big PC. I remember seeing the picture of the setup that you had at one of the first few events that you ever did, and I was like, Jesus Christ, there's like 30 grand's worth of equipment there.
Well, the first one wasn't. The first one wasn't actually.
Well, maybe not the first one, but it was one of the first few. But please.
Yeah. So I had to just do a proof of concept. I was like, this is what we want to do, and so effectively, I got the cheapest thing that they could get on effectively almost cash. So it didn't have to go up to like whatever the thing is where you have to get someone to approve money. So like a department's got a certain level of cash. So I managed to get some ropey live stream thing, and I didn't know about OBS at the time. I don't know why, because I was new to it. Like I'm a shoot like I shoot videos, I edit videos. That's my thing, which is fun. So yeah, and I've done all sorts. I've done them in nightclubs. I've done it for gigs. Done it for weddings. Done it like name a thing. That's
so
what
you
I
know,
did.
so you know for a fact that it's a completely different world as well.
It's. I mean, there are some tiny elements that you could start to like adjust, but it's completely different. You have to actually have a background in being like a network engineer, far more than you have to have anything to do with being like a videographer. The only things that I can bring to it is I can make some fancy like fucking like trailer videos and shit beforehand. Which is a bonus.
Transitions and the overlays look really
yeah, they always look great. But that's all. Again, that was all self-taught. A deep level of passion, and I did that pretty much solidly for several years on my own. Anyway, so I had no real idea. So I started doing some research, did some googling. There wasn't really best practices. There probably were, but they didn't really connect with me, and I didn't get it. But the first one was my own personal DSLR camera overhung from a table on my own jib. And then some other stuff. And I was in contact with a local Nottingham, because we're based in Nottingham and I'm based in Nottingham, company who I know, and they were giving me some like tech support. My friend Jamie ended up working for them. And he was just, I was like, dude, I know nothing. He's just like, here's some shit. Like, I was like, sweet. And then, so we did that, and then that went really well, first one. And then they were like, I had to go off and I had to go write a business plan. Huge fuck off business plan. I was like, look, this is what Wizards of the Coast have done, increase in sales 180% in 3 years, all that other shit. And then they were just like, cool, here's like 30 grand or whatever it was. And I went off and bought a bunch of stuff. And if I went back now, I'd buy completely different things with that 30 grand.
Yeah.
Like 4 years down the line. But it's because they had a non-professional, and I say this all the time, they hire non-professionals to do a professional's job. Why you would give me, with the experience I just described, which was fucking no experience, 30 grand to go buy stuff. I mean, why would you do that? But like, we did okay. But yeah, so that was the budget was a lot, but it was a mess. Let's just put it that way.
It was funny because I used to watch the streams and I'm like, I know you could do this with about 5K. Like, literally the capture card that you had. I don't know what you were using. I don't know if you had like SDI
TriCasters. Yeah, we were using TriCasters with SDIs.
Crazily expensive. Like, and that's the problem with streaming. Like, I don't know when we're gonna hit that level in tabletop gaming, but One of the problems with streaming is once you start trying to improve the broadcast quality, it's like exponential decay in quality improvement, but the cost of it is insane. Once you start using like hardware mixers instead of just mixing live in OBS and using overlays like that, Black Magic Atom desk is like 10 grand, and you start using, you start going from pretty straightforward DSLRs to broadcast quality 4K cameras and stuff, and the lighting rigs, and lapel mics that are £600 each when you were just using a Tascam on the table before. The cost just rockets up, but the difference in the quality of
Is
product
marginal. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not, and the people watching won't even notice because a lot of them are watching on iPads or on a 13-inch laptop screen or at most a 24-inch monitor. And it's like they're not watching for that quality of broadcast. They're watching it for personality, the format and the presentation. As long as the overlays are reasonably well put together and they don't look like dog shit and the information's being put across. Just want to hear personalities talk about something that they're passionate about, and I think like it's very easy to get distracted from that. Like in my industry, in the fighting games world, the most popular commentators aren't the ones who know the most about the game and are the most insightful. They're just guys with larger than life personalities, and people just like they'd literally watch these guys talk about anything. They talk about they'd watch these guys live stream their weekly shop run around the supermarket. Yeah. Competitive gaming. So
I agree with you. I think that there's like a line where people want information, but they also want the entertainment value that comes along with that information as well. Like I remember commentating one game, and the game was effectively over on the very first turn. And this is before we went, like one of the things we obviously did at the beginning of the year, and I'm not sure if you're aware, so one of the things that we now do when we're at a singles event is we do multi-table coverage. So during a round, so when we did 40k and Age Sigmar events earlier on in the year before Rona, we were doing 3 tables at once, which was... Yeah. As a commentator, it was so much more electric because those downtimes, because obviously, and that's where the difference between esports and obviously T-sports makes the switch in that it can be 2.5 hours. So how do you make that fascinating? And actually, the way that we found to do it was to just start jumping between 2 or 3 tables, and we developed a really good system. And I was like knackered at the end of like a round, but it was like it was electric because there was so much happening. Like you have on one tower
from being drained, right? Because
it's exhausting.
It's because it's so exciting rather than this is hard work.
Yes, which is how it previously would feel. Yeah, which is how it previously feel when you would do one game or when I worked at Warhammer Live. That those were the issues. Whereas when we jumped around, like at one point we had like a Tau guy playing against the Atreus big tank, and we were just waiting for these cold style battlesuits to go in. You'd never do nothing. But then we kept flipping over to this Necron guy who just couldn't kill a single Space Marine. I'm not talking about a unit. I mean a Marine. Yeah, his whole army, whole shooting phase, not one dead Iron Hand Marine. Yeah, it's just like what like, and that juxtaposition while we were watching fucking Thunderfire cannons in the middle just firing off. It was fun, right? And it was more engaging. So I do think that I understand what you mean about the casters being an integral part, and I recognise that. I do think that the presentation that we could do for tabletop gaming could be way better eventually. If once we start to crack it and work on it, I think that there's a far more exciting way to see it, which gets more people in, right? Like it gets more people motivated. That's what I think.
I definitely agree with that because, like, once you start out, you use a template from somewhere else, right? And your template, it sounds like it was the MCG, where it's top-down view and you're just watching what people are doing and you talk about it. And superficially, that works in the same way that superficially, me broadcasting any video game will be based off of the template of League of Legends and Dota, which were like the innovators in live broadcasts. So you have the live feed of what's going on and some people sitting at desk commentating over time. But as you progress, you start realizing the kind of subtle differences in what you're broadcasting compared to what your template has come from. And you can start to adapt and maybe bring in other things from other broadcasts. And like, having that red button, I guess, where you're nipping from game to game like you would in a sports broadcast, because Magic the Gathering games do not last 3 hours. So just focusing on that one game, you are completely tied into whether that game's interesting or not, whether that game is competitive and there's any drama, because obviously your job as a commentator is to kind of convey the tension of what's happening in the competitive environment. If there's no tension, the game's going to be, it's just going to be a fucking boring 2-hour, 3-hour broadcast if nothing's going on. So having that option to jump from table to table is something that you eventually progress to, because by necessity, you need to keep your broadcast interesting. And it's something you can kind of do when you have a better understanding of the technology for a significant investment, but not a huge investment.
Yeah, but I mean, still significant. I would like to put a pin in this, and once again thank the community, because last year we managed to crowdfund some PTZs, which are cameras that rotate and zoom around. But yeah, they're £2,000 each. Well, they're £2,500 each, and the community bought us 2, which was wild. Yeah, we ended up with 2 of these cameras. And that's amazing. Just FYI, if we're doing 3 or 4 tables, I wouldn't mind someone buying me 2 more. But that's just an FYI for everyone listening. Just throw that in. But yeah, without that, we would still be stuck to these like static. The money is outrageous. Like we must have spent on an incredibly small amount of budget. We must have spent like 15. Maybe 20 grand over the past 2 years. Now that might not sound like tons, but when you're making such small amount of money, that's that's everything. That's all of the cash that you have reinvested in the business, and that's a thing. But it's also because I don't know about you, especially in your early days. The thing that I see at the moment, and I'm sorry to go off on me because I'd really rather listen to you and what you've got to say, but the thing that I see is what it can be, and it could be so fucking fascinating. Like, it can be like, because I love this game, whether it be 40k Age of Sigmar, or eventually, like, if I could learn any of the other fucking games, them as well, probably. But I love the tactile nature of the wargaming thing and watching people play, and I'm sure you get that as well. I'm sure when you see people... The thing that excites me is when I see people engaging with each other at this kind of like high level or even this fun level.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a way to show that better to an audience. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a way that's because you've played the game and you know it's exciting, right? Like have you ever had any thoughts about what you think would be interesting to show or see, or because I know you've watched some things before. This is by the way, sorry, everyone who's just joined us live. This is Logan. I'll put his Twitter in the handle below, and I'll go find it on Twitter right now and post it in the chat.
DJ Logan Sama.
Yeah, at DJ Logan Sama.
I've actually got 2 Twitters because there's no crossover at all in the things that I do. So in my DJing career, there's almost no crossover in my Street Fighter commentary career. So I have 2 separate social medias. But yes, hello for the people that have just joined. I DJ professionally in UK Grime. I commentate on the Street Fighter Capcom Pro Tour around the world in Esports on Twitch. And I have loved Warhammer 40,000 for longer than both of those things. So, I'm still...
Would you be because this is the thing I'd like to ask you, like, and this is just, but without talking about anything else, just hypothetically, would you be interested in commentating a 40k game, or do you think that would be a challenge? Like, I'd be interested to know what you think, having done other stuff.
I avoid commentating things that I feel I can't add enough to. I feel like it wouldn't take me long to catch up to... I'd have to put the work in to catch up to what was going on in terms of the meta game, to be able to explain. One of the things I find super interesting, and that's why I really like watching Warhammer and Art of War. And this isn't to say that no one else does it, but it's something that I've found here, and I'm kind of happy getting it from there. They're really good at talking you through the situation that they're in, the situations that can present themselves, like why they can present themselves, how they avoid them, or how they're going to try and cause that to happen. And it gives you the story of how the game should theoretically progress. Because when 2 high-level players set up on the table and they know what mission and deployment they're playing, they have a rough idea in their head how the game should go. And to be able to convey that to an audience, I feel, is really important. Because then you can kind of, once you know what should be happening, you can then highlight the differences oh, the plan's gone wrong, or oh, he's made this daring play that goes contrary to, it's kind of like, knowing the moves that should happen in chess. And then when someone makes a brave gambit, it actually becomes exciting, even though it's chess and it's not in itself exciting, but it's that deviation and that spanner in the works and that crazy bit of genius that makes it exciting. And I feel like if you know and appreciate that stuff that's going on, you can convey that to the audience, and then they're emotionally involved in what's happening. Because, like, going back to Street Fighter, most people watching it just think, oh, it's the person that can do all the moves that wins. Oh, they're just pressing buttons, and the person that can throw the fireballs and do the dragon punches the best, that he's the guy that wins. And I feel like, because I know so much about how the game works and how it should be put together, I can talk about actually what they're trying to do in terms of mind games and the meta game that's going on and the strategies that they're probably both going to come with into this matchup. Because again, you have matchups in fighting games the same way you have matchups in tabletop games. And then you can start getting excited when they do something different, or, feeling dismayed when they fail to do something. Do you know what I mean? Oh, this, it's all going to, on a basic one, you have it's all coming down to this one charge roll. Everything comes down to this. Oh, he failed the charge roll. Oh, it's terrible on a very basic level. But, you can go deeper than that. You can go wider than that. And they're the things that are exciting to talk about on commentary. But you need the knowledge to be able to do that, because unless you know what's happening, what's supposed to happen, and what you're trying to avoid happening, you can't put any kind of emotion into the events that you're seeing. I think that's really important, to have knowledgeable people. Again, you have professional commentators or casters in all of these other things, including Magic the Gathering. They're there on behalf of the company. They're ambassadors of the company. And I know GW obviously get their staff to do their events, but I very much doubt that they are actually paid to do the commentary job. They're probably just there as part of their work commitment. And it's definitely something that can help, because it's another form of content creation, right?
It is. And actually, I think ultimately, one of the things I think is important, like you said about being ambassadors for the game, I think one of the things that are important, I think, for the commentary team sometimes is to be free of those shackles of needing to make sure that the company are okay with what they say. I think there's definitely some clout there in the fact that you can just be like, this is dumb. What you're about to see is going to be stupid. And it's like, and then setting that up, because you don't have to justify why it's okay. You just have to explain that it's available to do. That this can happen. And I think not having that shackle, having been someone with those shackles on me, I know that now you don't have to justify it. You just be like, look, this is going to be a stupid thing that's going to happen, or this is a crazy combination of things, which is really exciting to see.
About now, these guys are going to put 500 shots into these Leviathan dreadnoughts, and we're just going to watch nothing happen at all. Here you go, guys. Sit back and enjoy the light rainfall that's going to happen here. Exactly.
which I think is I think a really fun experience in some ways as well for me. But more on you, more on you. And about like what you can like tell us about what we're seeing, because I think that there's loads there. So casting obviously can improve. I definitely am with you on that, and can get better. And the environment can improve as well. Do you think that we're going to see that? That's the other thing as well. Like, is there some sort of difference between? Because I know that you're really invested in the 40k community. Do you think that there is a difference between the community that you see for Warhammer and the communities that you see in esports? Do you think that there's like like some sort of like tonal difference in that people see like tournament, like we'll tell LVO for instance, there's a cash prize at the end of that, and that's fairly ubiquitous. Like that's pretty common in like esports. But you obviously have just said that you think that might be an issue. What are your thoughts there?
Someone made a really good point in the chat that you could, obviously, stuff's on camera now and what have you. And we've had that previously where people have watched back archives and pointed out mistakes that have been made, or someone cheating specifically, or what have you. I mean, that's definitely been a controversial thing that's come up. But I think putting significant amounts of money in too early is very dangerous, because we haven't been through enough mistakes yet to kind of iron out the code of conduct and the social I mean, we have a social contract when we play, right?
Mm.
But when you start playing for money, the social contract is less important than like the actual result.
Yes.
And that's very contrary to the Games Workshop mission statement. They don't want people to just be like mean to each other and just only care about, that win at all costs gamer is not the person that they want representing their game. So I'm not sure how it dovetails together in terms of significant prize pots. We might get there eventually, but we need to move the community and slowly adapt that social contract that we have playing each other so that we can play serious hard games and not have the real problems that can arise when people are playing for large amounts of money. Because when
I would agree with you a bit, but I would also say that that I feel like TOs haven't been particularly responsible. I think TOs also are a little bit complicit in not moving on the nature of what we've had, because TO by nature wants as many people to attend, or the maximum to attend, so that they don't lose money, and if possible, they can make money. Now, I'm not saying all TOs do that to make money, obviously, but at least covering their costs is important. Now, the difference between and we know one bad review is 100 bad reviews. Like one bad review is way worse than 100 good reviews. So it never works to just be like outright.
Yeah.
But I feel like TOs haven't been aggressive enough, haven't been confrontational enough in those places to be. Now this is coming from like, because I used to compete doing Filipino stick fighting, of all things.
Jeez.
Around the world. But the TOs in that were pretty serious. Like, if you fucked about, you got hit in the head with a stick. So like, I mean, if they were fast enough to get you.
So again, that brings us back to job roles and the seriousness of it, because at the moment, we're running outside of maybe ETC, WTC. You're generally running volunteer judges, and there's not enough judges as well. And judges are generally mates of people that are playing, or at least they know each other and what have you. Do you mind if I respond to some of the like really valid points in the stream chat as well?
Please do.
So someone said mistakes happen just as refs in any baseball, American football, basketball league, which is true, but those mistakes are called by the referees. When they are mistakes or outright cheating, and there's grey areas in the middle, gamesmanship that happen by the players. If we don't have that kind of strict refereeing, that you would need a referee to sit and watch the whole game if you're playing for money. If you get to final day at LVO and you're playing for $10,000 and you're in top 8, you'd need a dedicated referee to watch everything.
But
do you think we have
they didn't previously, and that is the criticism I'm pointing a finger at. Like, I think everyone, like, we're talking about the 2018 LVO. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, like, it's because money was involved, that's why we saw what we saw on the tabletop. And I don't agree with you at all, because we've seen what we saw on the tabletop at events where there was no money. Yeah, but like the TOs also should have been more aggressive about it, and like, or maybe that's not the right way, more professional about it and done stuff. Sorry, after you, carry on.
Someone said, do you think we have a stable enough game that we can take to that level? I think there's issue in Games Workshop's QA that's holding this back. I honestly believe that the stability of the game and the tightness of the rule set don't really make any difference in terms of it being competitive or not. Competitive just means whether people want to take it seriously and they want to play organized play. The thing that makes tabletop wargaming difficult is its approximations. When you're playing video games or something that's digital, like chess is a digital game because it's squares and blocks. Like Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl is an amazing game for playing at a competitive level because there's no abstraction. You're moving square to square and there's dice rolls and that's it. There's really no abstraction. It's almost like a video game, which is why Blood Bowl translates so well to a video game. Whereas when you're measuring things by eye, when you're moving things by hand, when ranges are approximated but literally by eye, once for me to say, is this in or is this not out? Yes, you can do pre-measuring and be more vocal in how you move and statements of intent. I think statement of intent is incredibly important for competitive gaming in general, and will be more so as prizes increase. There's way less disputes then when you have statement of intent. You're not trying to go, oh, okay, I'm going to declare this charge, and this charge is 9 inches, and like, no, it's over 9 inches, 9.1, so you need 10. Oh no, but before you made the move, you can pre-measure and go, right, my move is blah blah blah. I'm actually this far away. Do you agree that I'm this far away? Cool. That's going to leave me with a charge of 9. Do you agree? Yes. Cool. All right, let's move. So that helps. But just because it's an abstraction, whereas games like Magic the Gathering, again, it's card based.
It's digital, really.
It's almost like a logic engine. So it does lend itself to esports because the game determines the rules. And with sports, the referee determines the rules rather than if we were playing, for example, tennis, you and me, we're playing tennis, but we're playing for £100,000 in our game for some reason, don't know why, right? But there's no umpire, and we have to call our own faults. We have to call our own outs.
Yeah.
There's there might be
tension,
some disagreements, but if it's someone else that calls the ruling, then it's kind of out of our hand. That's how sports works. And that's why I think, TO's taking the lead and bringing in referees but that takes more budget, paying referees that know what they're talking about and are able to make the correct call, paying commentators that are able to know what they're talking about and can add personality. This all takes more money and investment. But thankfully, the good thing is, Warhammer makes a shitload of money. So when Games Workshop decide that it's actually worth their while, they can probably afford to do it because they gave you 30 grand to buy a TriCaster. So they might be able to afford the other stuff.
But I don't know. I can sell snow to an Eskimo. I'm just letting you know that. Like, I got. And I think mainly she just wanted me to get the fuck out of her office. I think that was the main part. I was just like live streaming. She was like, "Please leave."
Do I have to write on this shit
you need to get out of this. I never want to see you again. Big love to her as well. I'd also like to bring up very quickly, because I think all the points you made there were valid. I'd also like to talk about the fact that if you look at Wizards of the Coast specifically, and you look at something like Star City Games, now there's the difference there, and I'm not sure if you're au fait with those, but Wizards of the Coast are the in-house. They're the company that make the game, and they would do their own live stream, and they would do their own thing, right? And obviously they had the budget to do so. But Star City Games was its own company that did the same thing but independently, and eventually became the more popular way of doing it, because what they were focused on wasn't how do we represent our game. It was how do we make the most entertaining version. It's like what's happened with cricket. Cricket is 5 days fucking long. End of. Yeah, right? And then a bunch of Indians were like, nah, fuck that. We're just going to make this, fast as shit. Yeah, and then we're going to do world politics with cricket.
Hammering. No one wants to see you block out your off stump for 6 hours at a time. Just hammer that shit over into the car park. That's what.
Yeah, we just want to see sixes all day, and it's taken over the world. It's huge. It's huge. It's like
so. Can I raise a counterpoint?
Yeah,
to
please
that?
do.
All right. So going back to, and I can say this from gaming, right? The IP owner definitely doesn't want your brand to be bigger than theirs.
Always.
You might have a cool situation where Wizards of the Coast see a value in it, and they're like, it's cool, go ahead, because you're doing great stuff, and it's actually leading to more sales for our games. So you run with that and make as much money as you want. But what will generally happen is, if they see most companies, if they see someone out there earning a shit ton of money from their IP, they're going to want a license fee for that. They're going to want you to pay them to use their IP and broadcast it, because they have the right to do so. And I see that in all esports, where they're fortunate because they have enough sponsors to do it, and the business works out, right? So say like a Faceit or an ESL will come in and go, right, yeah, we want to do a Counter-Strike league. We're going to pay Valve the license to do this league, and then we're going to put it on. We're going to pay for the teams to come in, and even after paying all that money, we're still making so much money from sponsors and ad revenue and everything else that it's actually still a profitable business model for us. And if we can find that and that's the same with sports, right? If you can find that broadcasting rights sales, the corporate partnerships, that's cool. But the problem is finding those non-endemic corporate partnerships, because it's not like you can go, right, we're going to do a big Warhammer 40,000 league, and we're going to broadcast it out here, and we're going to get all these sponsors, and we're going to give Games Workshop the license fee to do it, and our sponsors are going to be all these third-party manufacturers, which is generally what they are for prize support, right? A bunch of third-party that are making knockoff Steam Knight helmets and orc heads and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Games Workshop will not allow that at a high level, right? Because you are basically advertising people that are breaching their IP.
Yes.
So you need to find and that's where the business growth comes in, where it's like, okay, what do all these 30 plus men like? All right, well, let's go and find an IPA sponsor or a beer sponsor. They'll come in. And that can be money there. What do these people spend money on? All right, well, let's get Just Eat to sponsor it, or Domino's Pizza, and that kind of stuff. So they're the ways that it can work. But again, you have to work within an open-minded company that wants to let you associate these brands to their brands, because we've seen that in Street Fighter specifically, where there's companies that have come in that have wanted to be big sponsors on Pro Tours and put significant money in, but they've been alcohol breweries or online gambling sites. And you see it in sport, where they're at a point now where it's like, yeah, we can't have cigarette adverts anymore. Yeah, we don't really want to have alcohol advertising anymore, because there's a lot of kids that watch these broadcasts. Oh, we've got strict regulations now on the gambling sites and how they can advertise, because we realize that we're beholden to an audience that has a lot of young people in. So it's not an easy thing to monetize, and the money has to come from somewhere. And most of the successful broadcast company, most of the successful esports broadcasts are from publishers that look at it as marketing spend. Valve and Riot generally look at it as marketing spend for Dota, League, and CSGO. They're like, right, if everyone's watching, that means everyone's playing and everyone's spending. Yeah. And obviously, it seems like that idea is coming around at Games Workshop, where they're like, yeah, the more content that's out there for our games, the more people are going to discover and want to spend money on our games. But that's not something that happens overnight, as you know, unless it's you and they want to get you the fuck out of the office.
Yeah, I think that's the key part. I think one of the pitches for me early was like put videos on Facebook. It's got like 260 times the reach of YouTube video, and they were like, no, it doesn't. And I was like, okay, there you go. There's the statistics. And I was like, and every one of the geeks that shares it is going to have geek mates. That's going to be the case, yeah. Right? And I think that is the thing that we have. Warhammer, it wouldn't be anywhere near as big as it was now if it wasn't for all of the third-party publishers effectively who work on behalf of the event organizers, the streamers, the podcasters, all that group. I think that they're almost reliant on that side of it to some degree, and have been for years, to pick up the slack. Especially like when they do things that they don't want to cop for. They want to make all the boards smaller, and they'll be like, oh, it's FLG's fault, and it's like, no, it's your fault. Like, come on, like, own it. But they don't want to be a part of it, which I think is interesting. Listen, Logan, it's been lovely having you on the show. Thank you very much. I've found it fascinating. I know everyone in the chat has done the same as well. And I'd love to have you on again and talk more in the future. Have you got any?
I'm not going anywhere. I'm stuck indoors. So
yeah, it's true. You got any shout outs? Anyone you want to say hi to, or do you want people to reach out and talk to you about things?
No, leave me alone. Fuck off. I'll see you in 9th edition.
Okay, good. All right.
It's been a pleasure talking to you anyway, man. Always love, and keep doing all the great work you do, man.
Oh, thank you. If you, I mean, this is Ed Sheeran's favourite show after all. This particular show right now. I think that's a fact. What army are you going to play in 9th edition before we head out?
Any Marines that I can run and hit people with. So
Okay.
Blood Angels, Space Wolves, whatever we can make work.
Okay. All right. Sweet. All right. Well, listen. If you listen to podcasts, please stay hydrated. Thank you to the Patreons, of course, and everyone who joined us live. Tim, Nikos, Dreadwoods, Scott B. You guys are great. Everyone have a great day, and I'll see you all tomorrow when I'll be talking to Tony Moore as an ex-playtester for Age of Sigmar. We'll be talking some shit, so it'll be fun. See you guys tomorrow, and goodbye.